The galaxy's toughest alloy snapped, and every commander asked the same question. What is she made of? The observation deck of the Valoran Prime Research Station held 200 of the galaxy's finest military minds. They came from every corner of known space, representing 17 different civilizations. Some stood on 2 legs, others on 4. Some breathed oxygen, others required specialized atmosphere suits. But today, they all shared the same purpose: to witness history. At the center of the massive chamber sat a beam of Titan X9. It gleamed under the bright lights, its silver-blue surface reflecting the faces of those who gathered around it. For 300 years, this alloy had been the foundation of galactic warfare. Every warship hull, every space station support beam, every critical structure that needed to survive the harshness of space, all built from Titan X9. The material had never been broken, never been bent, never shown weakness. Lieutenant Hana Kim stood at the back of the crowd, her tablet in hand. She was the human observer, a role that meant very little in practical terms. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago, and they were still considered the newcomers. Most species barely noticed when humans walked into a room. They were average height, average build, average everything, nothing special, nothing remarkable. The head scientist, a tall Vrexian named Tholvan, raised his 4 arms for attention. His species was known throughout the galaxy as the strongest, their warriors legendary in combat. When Tholvan spoke, his deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Today we demonstrate the unbreakable," he announced. "Titan X9 under pressure never before applied. 10 million pounds of force concentrated on a single point." The crowd murmured with excitement. Even the most experienced engineers leaned forward. The testing machine lowered into position, a massive hydraulic press that could crush most known materials into dust. But everyone knew Titan X9 would hold. It always did. Hana checked her tablet, making notes. Her job was simple: observe, record, report back to Earth. Nothing more. She had no expertise in material science, no special knowledge to contribute. She was just there because protocol required every council member to send a representative. The test began. The press descended slowly, its force reading climbing on the displays around the room. 1 million pounds, 2 million, 5 million. The beam didn't even vibrate. Tholvan nodded with satisfaction, his expression proud. The Vrexians had developed Titan X9, and it remained their greatest contribution to galactic civilization. 8 million pounds, 9 million. Then something went wrong. The hydraulic press stuttered. A high-pitched whine filled the air, the sound of metal under stress. But it wasn't the Titan X9 beam making that noise. It was the press itself. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. Engineers shouted in 3 different languages, all saying the same thing: catastrophic failure. The press exploded outward in a shower of sparks and metal fragments. The Titan X9 beam, still perfectly intact, tipped sideways off its platform. It fell in what seemed like slow motion, its 4,000-kilogram mass dropping toward the observation area. Hana looked up from her tablet just in time to see it coming. She tried to move, but her feet tangled in the equipment cables scattered across the floor. She fell backward, her right arm landing across a support brace. The beam came down on top of it. The pain was immediate and intense. Hana gasped, her vision blurring. 4,000 kilograms of the galaxy's strongest alloy pinned her arm against solid metal. She could feel the pressure, enormous and unyielding, crushing down on her forearm. Around her, chaos erupted. Security alarms blared. Medical teams rushed forward, their equipment clattering. Tholvan was shouting orders, his voice cutting through the noise. Someone was calling for gravity lifters, the specialized equipment needed to move something so massive. A Lothari medic knelt beside Hana, its crystalline body refracting the emergency lights into rainbow patterns. "Don't move," it said, its voice like wind chimes. We're getting cutting equipment. We'll have to remove the arm to save your life." Hana heard the words, but they seemed distant. Her arm was trapped. The beam wouldn't move. They would cut it off. She would lose her arm. No. The thought came from somewhere deep, somewhere primal. She had two arms. One was trapped, one was free. The math was simple. Hana placed her left hand flat against the floor. She took a breath, filling her lungs completely. Her muscles tensed, every fiber in her body aligning toward a single purpose. The pain in her trapped arm faded into background noise, unimportant compared to the task ahead. She pushed. The beam moved. Just slightly, just a few centimeters, but it moved. The Lothari medic stumbled backward in shock. Other voices rose in confusion. Titan X9 didn't move. Gravity lifters moved it. Machines moved it. Not people, not with one hand. Hana adjusted her grip, her fingers spreading wide against the floor. Her teeth clenched so hard she thought they might crack. Every muscle in her left arm stood out like cables under her skin. Her shoulder socket screamed in protest. She ignored it. She pushed again, harder this time. The beam lifted. Centimeters became inches. Hana pulled her trapped arm free, feeling the blood rush back into compressed tissue. The beam rose higher, now a full foot off the ground, now 2 feet. Hana's whole body shook with the effort, sweat pouring down her face. Then, with a sound somewhere between a scream and a roar, she threw it. 4,000 kilograms of Titan X9 flew through the air. It hit the reinforced wall with a tremendous crash that shook the entire chamber. The wall dented inward, its advanced composite material buckling under the impact. The beam clattered to the floor, leaving a crater in the wall where it had struck. The room fell completely silent. Hana sat up slowly, cradling her injured arm. It was bruised, deeply bruised, the skin already turning purple and black, but it wasn't broken. It wasn't crushed. It wasn't even bleeding. She flexed her fingers experimentally. They worked. Everything worked. 200 of the galaxy's finest minds stared at her. Medical equipment lay forgotten. The rescue team stood frozen, their cutting tools dangling uselessly in their hands. No one spoke. No one moved. Commander Tholvan stepped forward, his massive frame towering over Hana. His 4 eyes were wide, his expression a mixture of disbelief and something that might have been fear. He looked at Hana, then at the dented wall, then back at Hana. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silence of the chamber, everyone heard it clearly. "What is she made of?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Hana looked down at her bruised arm, then up at the crowd of alien faces staring at her. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. What could she say? She had just done the impossible. She had lifted what couldn't be lifted, thrown what couldn't be thrown. And she didn't know why. She was just human, just average, just Hana. But as the medics finally rushed forward to examine her, as the scientists began pulling up data and checking recordings, as Commander Tholvan's questions spread through communication channels to every corner of the galaxy, one thing became very clear. Nothing about humanity was average anymore. The galaxy had just learned that they didn't know humans at all. And Hana Kim, a simple engineer who just wanted to do her job and go home, had become the question that demanded an answer. What were humans made of? The galaxy was about to find out. The galaxy's toughest alloy snapped, and every commander asked the same question. What is she made of? The medical facility on Valoran Prime was designed to treat every known species in the galaxy. Its equipment could analyze biology ranging from silicon-based Lotharii to the methane-breathing Quelnar. When Hana Kim was brought in, the doctors thought they knew what to expect. They had treated humans before. Minor injuries, common illnesses, routine procedures. Humans were fragile compared to most species. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore. Their organs failed under stress. Except Hana's arm wasn't broken. Dr. Velquist, the chief medical officer, stared at the scan results for the fifth time. His crystalline fingers tapped against the display in a rhythm that indicated deep confusion. The Lothari were known for their analytical minds, their ability to solve complex problems through pure logic. But nothing about these results made sense. "Run it again," he told his assistant, a young Vrexian named Kira. Kira sighed but initiated another scan. The machine hummed, its sensors passing over Hana's arm in precise patterns. The results appeared on screen. Identical to the previous 4 scans. Bone density, normal for human baseline. Muscle fiber composition, standard human. Tissue damage, moderate bruising, already healing. Expected recovery time, 7 to 10 days. "She threw 4,000 kilograms, Dr. Velquist said quietly. "The strongest Vrexian on record can lift half that, and their bones are 3 times denser than hers." Hana sat on the examination table, her arm wrapped in a healing sleeve. She had been in the medical facility for 6 hours now, undergoing test after test. No one would tell her when she could leave. No one would answer her questions. They just kept scanning her, measuring her, studying her like she was some kind of puzzle. "I want to go back to my quarters," she said. "My arm is fine. You've confirmed that multiple times." Dr. Velquist turned to her, his faceted eyes reflecting her image a dozen times. "Lieutenant Kim, you accomplished something that should be physically impossible. We need to understand how." "I just lifted it," Hana said. "I don't know what else to tell you." Before Dr. Velquist could respond, the door slid open. Commander Tholvan entered, ducking slightly to fit through the doorway. Behind him came 3 members of the Galactic Military Council, their expressions grave. "Lieutenant Kim," Tholvan said, "you're being summoned before the full council." Hana stood up quickly. "Am I under arrest?" "No," Tholvan replied, "but you're not free to leave the station either. The council has questions. Many questions." 3 days later, Hana stood in the council chambers. The room was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from all 17 member species. Tiered seating rose in a circle around a central platform where she stood. Hundreds of eyes watched her from above. The council speaker, an ancient Quelnar whose name translated roughly to deep water, addressed the assembly. His voice bubbled through translation software, emerging in standard galactic common. "We gather to understand an anomaly. Lieutenant Hana Kim, human, demonstrated physical capability that exceeds all known projections for her species. We must determine if this represents a threat to galactic security." Hana felt her heart racing. Threat? She had just tried to free her own arm. She hadn't attacked anyone. She hadn't done anything wrong. The questions began. They came from all sides in dozens of languages, translated in real time. "Are you augmented?" asked a Corvathian general. "No, sir." "Have you undergone genetic modification?" "No, sir." "Are you a representative of human military capability or an outlier?" Hana paused at that one. "I don't know, sir. I'm just an engineer." The testing resumed. Over the next 3 weeks, Hana underwent every examination the galaxy's science could provide. They measured her strength, her endurance, her reaction time. They scanned her genetics down to individual base pairs. They tested her in different gravities, different atmospheres, different conditions. Every test came back the same, perfectly normal human. Dr. Velquist compiled the data and presented it to a closed session of military commanders. Hana was not present, but she heard about it later from Tholvan, who had begun visiting her quarters each evening. The Vrexian commander had taken an interest in her case, though Hana suspected it was more than professional curiosity. His species prided themselves on strength, and she had exceeded their best warriors. "The doctor found something," Tholvan told her, settling his massive frame into a reinforced chair. Something everyone missed. What? Hana asked. You're not exceptional. You're normal. Hana frowned. I don't understand. Thulvan leaned forward. Every test shows you operating within normal human parameters. The problem is that normal human parameters are far beyond what we thought they were. When your species joined the Council, they provided basic biological data: height, weight, average lifespan. But no one ever asked about capability under stress. No one tested how strong an average human could be if they needed to be. Hana thought about her training on Earth. The endless runs, the obstacle courses, the physical requirements that seemed brutal at the time, but were just considered standard for military service. She remembered carrying Corporal Jiwon Park 15 kilometers through the mountains during a training exercise. Jiwon had twisted his ankle, and leaving him behind wasn't an option, so Hana had put him on her back and walked. It had been hard, exhausting, but not impossible. We're just normal, she said quietly. By human standards, yes, Thulvan replied. By galactic standards, you're all exceptional. The Council demanded proof. Earth responded by sending a delegation. When they arrived 2 weeks later, Hana felt a wave of relief. Finally, someone from home. Finally, people who understood. Captain Minho Choi led the delegation. He was a decorated officer, respected throughout the Terran Defense Force. With him came a squad of soldiers: Private Yuna Lee, Sergeant Taeyang Nam, and Specialist Jisoo Han. They arrived in standard uniforms, carrying standard equipment, looking completely ordinary. The Council assembled to meet them. Captain Choi stood on the central platform, his posture relaxed and confident. You asked what Lieutenant Kim is made of, he said. I'll show you what we're all made of. He gestured to Private Yuna Lee. She was small, barely 160 centimeters tall, with a slight build that made her look almost fragile. She stepped forward and, without any preparation or warm-up, jumped straight up. In the station's standard gravity, she rose 5 meters into the air before landing lightly on her feet. The Council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Sergeant Taeyang Nam went next. He began running on a treadmill, his pace increasing steadily. After 10 minutes, the treadmill's display showed 40 kilometers per hour. After 20 minutes, it showed the same speed. After an hour, Taeyang was still running, his breathing steady, his form perfect. The test ended only because the Council members grew tired of watching. Specialist Jisoo Han climbed. The station's engineering section had a 50-meter vertical access shaft used for maintenance. With the Council watching through cameras, Jisoo climbed it using only the small handholds built into the wall. No ropes, no safety equipment. She reached the top in 12 minutes, then climbed back down just as easily. When they finished, Captain Choi addressed the Council again. You're wondering if Lieutenant Kim is special. She is. She's a trained officer in the Terran Defense Force. But what she did wasn't superhuman by our standards. It was just human. This is what we are. This is what Earth makes. Dr. Velquist stood up from his seat, his voice cutting through the noise. How? Your bone density is average. Your muscle composition is standard. By every metric we understand, you should not be capable of these feats. Captain Choi smiled. Doctor, you're used to species that evolved on gentle worlds, low gravity, rich atmospheres, abundant resources. Earth isn't gentle. Earth is hard, 1 full G of gravity pulling us down every moment of our lives. An atmosphere that rusts metal and supports wildfires. Predators that hunted us. Diseases that killed us. Ice ages and droughts and disasters. We didn't become strong because we wanted to. We became strong because weak humans didn't survive. The room fell silent. Hana watched the faces around her, seeing understanding begin to dawn. They had judged humanity based on appearance, on initial scans, on surface-level data. They never asked the deeper questions. They never wondered what it took to survive on a world like Earth. Commander Tholvan spoke into the silence. When we first met humans, we thought you were weak. We were wrong. No, Captain Choi said gently. You weren't wrong. We are weak, by our own standards. Every human in this room wishes we were stronger, faster, better. We push ourselves because we know we can always improve. But by your standards? He looked around the chamber. By your standards, the average human is exceptional. And we never knew it because we had nothing to compare ourselves to except each other. The questions continued for hours after that, but the tone had changed. Fear began to shift toward respect, suspicion toward curiosity. The galaxy was learning that they had invited something powerful into their midst, but something that had been powerful all along. They just hadn't noticed. The galaxy's toughest alloy snapped, and every commander asked the same question. What is she made of? The council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread throughout the station that Captain Minho Choi would be presenting a formal explanation of human physiology. Scientists, military officers, diplomats, even maintenance workers found reasons to attend. Standing room had run out an hour before the scheduled start time. Those who couldn't fit inside watched through video feeds from every available screen on the station. Hana sat in the front row, her bruised arm now mostly healed. Next to her sat the other members of the human delegation. Private Yuna Lee was reviewing something on her tablet. Sergeant Taeyang Nam sat perfectly still, his posture military straight. Specialist Jisoo Han was sketching in a notebook, her hand moving in quick, precise strokes. Captain Choi stood at the central podium, waiting for silence. When the last murmurs died away, he began. Members of the Galactic Council, honored guests, I'm here today to explain something that Earth never thought to mention during first contact. We didn't hide it. We didn't think it mattered. We were wrong. The main display behind him lit up with an image of Earth. The blue and green planet slowly rotating. Clouds swirled across its surface. Continents stretched beneath them. This is Earth, Choi said. Our home. It looks peaceful from space. Beautiful even. But Earth is one of the harshest inhabited worlds in known space. The image changed, showing a gravity comparison chart. Earth's gravity appeared in red, significantly higher than the galactic average marked in blue. 1 full G of gravity. Every moment from birth until death, our planet pulls us down with relentless force. Your species evolved on worlds with 0.6 G, 0.7 G, maybe 0.8 G. A Vrexian child grows up under 0.75 G. A Lothari experiences 0.65 G. But human children, they crawl, walk, run, and play under 1 full G. Every movement is resistance training. Every step builds muscle and bone density that your species only achieves through deliberate exercise. Tholvan, sitting in his commander's seat, leaned forward. His expression was thoughtful. Choi continued. Oxygen levels. Earth's atmosphere is 21% oxygen. The galactic standard for habitable worlds is 15 to 18%. We breathe a richer mixture than almost anyone else. Our cells are saturated with oxygen. Our metabolic processes run at peak efficiency all the time. What you consider enhanced performance, we consider normal breathing. The display changed again, showing evolutionary timelines. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? It means we didn't chase prey for minutes. We chased them for hours, sometimes days. We ran until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. And then we kept running to bring the meat back to our families. Our cardiovascular systems are designed for endurance that most species can't comprehend. Dr. Velquist stood up. Captain, I've reviewed the data. What you're describing should produce obvious physical differences. Denser bones, larger muscle mass, visible adaptation, but humans appear average in every measurable way. Choi nodded. That's because you're measuring the wrong things, Doctor. You're looking at what we're made of. You should be looking at how efficiently we use it. Human muscle fibers aren't denser, they're more responsive. Our bones aren't thicker, they're structured to distribute force better. We don't look different because we evolved to be efficient, not bulky. Every gram of mass serves a purpose. He gestured to Yuna Lee. She stood and walked to the center platform, dwarfed by the massive space around her. Private Lee weighs 53 kilograms, Choi said. By any standard, she's small, but she can run 40 kilometers without stopping. She can climb vertical surfaces for hours. She can carry 30 kilograms of equipment through rough terrain all day. Not because she's exceptional among humans, because she met the minimum standard to join the military. Yuna smiled and gave a small wave to the audience before returning to her seat. The display shifted to show chemical structures. Adrenaline, Choi said. Every species has some version of stress hormones, but human adrenaline response is unique. When threatened, our bodies can temporarily increase strength by 30 to 50%. Our pain tolerance increases. Our reaction time improves. We literally become stronger when we need to be. He paused, letting that sink in. Lieutenant Kim didn't lift that beam through normal means. She lifted it through adrenaline response triggered by the threat of losing her arm. What you saw wasn't her baseline capability. It was her stressed capability. And yes, that's normal for humans. A Corvathian officer raised his hand. Choi nodded to him. Are you saying every human can do what Lieutenant Kim did? Under the right circumstances? Yes. We call it hysterical strength. Parents lift vehicles off trapped children. Soldiers carry wounded comrades twice their weight. Civilians perform feats of strength during disasters that they could never repeat under normal conditions. The capability exists in every human. The question is only whether the situation is desperate enough to trigger it. The chamber erupted in conversation. Choi waited patiently for silence to return. Taiyang Nam stood next. I'll demonstrate endurance, he announced. He walked to a treadmill that had been set up on the platform. Please set it to 40 kilometers per hour. The technician complied. Taiyang began running. His breathing was steady, controlled. His form was perfect. The display showed his heart rate, elevated but stable. After 10 minutes, he showed no signs of slowing. After 20 minutes, the same. After 30 minutes, some council members started checking their own chronometers in disbelief. At 45 minutes, Taiyang finally stopped. He was sweating but not exhausted. That's a normal training run, he said. Nothing special. Jisoo Han went next. A climbing wall had been erected, 50 meters of sheer surface with minimal handholds. She ascended without hesitation, her movements fluid and confident. At the top, she didn't rest. She came back down just as quickly, then climbed up again. How long can she do that? Someone asked. Hours, Choi replied. We've had soldiers climb for 6, 7, 8 hours during training exercises. The record is 12 hours of continuous climbing. Again, not superhuman, just human. Dr. Velquist approached the podium. Captain, I need to understand. These capabilities you're describing, they come from evolution, yes. But evolution doesn't happen in isolation. What specific pressures created these adaptations? Choi's expression grew serious. Earth tried to kill us, Doctor. Repeatedly. Ice ages that should have driven us to extinction. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years. Droughts, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, predators with claws and teeth hunting us in the darkness. Diseases that killed millions. Parasites, bacteria, viruses. Earth threw everything at us. He pulled up images on the display. Ancient human ancestors fleeing predators. Primitive humans huddling against ice age cold. Early civilizations recovering from natural disasters. We survived because the weak ones died. That sounds harsh, but it's truth. Only the humans who could run the farthest escaped predators. Only those who could endure the longest survived famines. Only those with the strongest immune systems survived plagues. Generation after generation, Earth filtered out weakness. What you see now is what's left after 200,000 years of the harshest quality control imaginable. The room was silent. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed muted. Your species evolved on worlds that nurtured you, Choi continued. Worlds with gentle gravity, comfortable temperatures, abundant food. You became intelligent, creative, peaceful. Those are admirable traits. Earth gave us different gifts. It made us tough. It made us stubborn. It made us able to survive things that would kill others. Commander Tholvan stood. And you never thought to mention this during first contact? Choi shrugged. Commander, we didn't know we were unusual. We had no comparison point. When we met you, we saw species that could breathe different atmospheres, survive in space longer, process radiation better than we could. We saw your technology, far ahead of ours. We thought we were the weak ones. The irony, Dr. Velquist said softly, is remarkable. Choi nodded. We measured ourselves against you and found ourselves wanting. You measured our technology and culture and found us acceptable. No one thought to ask about physical capability because we all assumed everyone was roughly similar. Why would we think otherwise? Another council member stood, a Quelnar admiral. These demonstrations are impressive, Captain, but they raise an uncomfortable question. If humans are this capable, what happens if humanity decides to use that capability against the rest of us? The room went quiet. It was the question everyone had been thinking, but no one wanted to ask directly. Choi met the Admiral's gaze steadily. That's a fair concern, he said. Let me address it directly. Yes, humans are physically formidable, but we're not aggressive by nature. We're protective. The same evolution that made us strong also made us cooperative. We had to work together to survive Earth. We had to care for our wounded, our sick, our young. We developed empathy, compassion, social bonds. We're strong because Earth was dangerous, not because we enjoyed danger. He gestured to the humans in the front row. Every person here volunteered for military service, not to conquer, but to protect. We joined the Galactic Council because we wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves. That's human nature, too. We're pack animals. We bond with our groups. And now that we're part of the galactic community, you're our pack. The tension in the room eased slightly. Tholvan nodded slowly. You're saying we should trust you because cooperation is in your nature. I'm saying you should trust us because we've been nothing but trustworthy, Choi replied. Judge us by our actions, not our capabilities. We've been part of the Council for 15 years. In that time, have we given you any reason to fear us? The silence that followed was answer enough. The galaxy's toughest alloy snapped, and every commander asked the same question. What is she made of? The news spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond, growing wider with each passing hour. Within a day, every inhabited system knew about the human demonstrations. Within a week, military academies were revising their threat assessment protocols. Within a month, the political landscape of the Galactic Council had fundamentally shifted. Hana watched it happen from her temporary quarters on Valoran Prime. She had become famous overnight, her name appearing in news feeds across 17 different species networks. Some called her the woman who broke Titanex. Others simply called her the strong one. She didn't feel like either. She felt like an engineer who wanted to go back to work. But the galaxy had other plans. Captain Choi visited her quarters one evening, his expression troubled. He sat down heavily in the chair across from her. They're running war simulations, he said without preamble. Hana felt her stomach tighten. Who? Everyone. The Corvathians, the Rim Coalition, even some of our allies. They're calculating what would happen in a conflict with humanity. And... Choi rubbed his face tiredly. In ground combat scenarios, human forces win 70% of engagements even when outnumbered 3-1. In extended campaigns, that number goes up to 85%. Our endurance advantage means we can fight when everyone else has to rest. Hana stood and walked to the window. Outside, the station's docking bay was busy with ships coming and going. Somewhere out there, people were planning for war with humanity. The thought made her feel sick. "We're not their enemies," she said quietly. "I know, but fear doesn't care about facts." The Galactic Council held an emergency session 3 days later. This time, Hana was required to attend, along with the entire human delegation. They sat together in a designated section, very aware of the eyes on them. Chancellor Vex of the Corvathian Empire stood to speak first. He was an imposing figure. Even among aliens, his scaled skin gleaming under the chamber lights. His voice carried authority that came from ruling one of the largest empires in known space. "We cannot ignore the threat that has been revealed," Vex began. "Humanity possesses military capability far exceeding our initial assessments. This changes the balance of power within the Council. We must take measures to ensure galactic security." "What kind of measures?" asked a Lothari representative. "Restrictions on human population growth in mixed colonies, limits on the size of the Terran Defense Force, regular inspections of human military facilities. These are reasonable precautions given the circumstances." Captain Choi stood up. "Chancellor Vex, with respect, humanity has done nothing to warrant such treatment. We've been peaceful members of the Council for 15 years. We've contributed to joint defense operations, shared our technology, and followed every Council directive. You're proposing to punish us for being physically capable." Vex turned his cold gaze on Choi. "We're proposing to protect ourselves from a potential threat. Today, you're peaceful. Tomorrow, your species has a documented history of warfare among yourselves. What happens when you turn that capacity toward us?" Commander Tholvan rose from his seat. "The Vrexians oppose these measures." The room fell silent. The Vrexians were the Council's military backbone, their voice carrying enormous weight in matters of defense. "The humans have been honorable in all their dealings," Tholvan continued. "They fought beside us in 3 separate conflicts. Their soldiers have saved Vrexian lives. I will not support punishing allies for the crime of being strong. By that logic, we should restrict the Vrexians as well, since we too are physically formidable." "The Vrexians are a known quantity," Vex countered. "We understand your capabilities. The humans deceived us." "We deceived no one," Choi said, his voice hard. "We provided all requested information during first contact. If your analysts failed to ask the right questions, that's not deception. That's oversight on your part." The debate raged for hours. The Council split into 3 distinct factions. The fearful, led by Chancellor Vex, wanted restrictions. The pragmatic, led by the Vrexians, argued for trust based on past behavior. A third group, the Rim Coalition, seemed more interested in economic opportunities than security concerns. During a recess, Hana found herself approached by a Rim Coalition delegate, a sleek amphibian named Quellex. "Lieutenant Kim," Quellex said, his translator rendering his burbling speech into smooth galactic common. "I represent several corporations interested in hiring human personnel. Security work, primarily. Would you be interested in consulting?" Hana stared at him. "You want to hire humans as mercenaries?" "I want to hire humans as security specialists," Quellex corrected. "Your capabilities make you ideal for protecting high-value assets. The pay would be exceptional." "I'm not interested." "Think about it. You could name your price." After he left, Yuna Lee appeared at Hana's side. "They're already seeing us as commodities," she said quietly. "Weapons to be bought and sold." "We're not weapons," Hana replied. "No, but we're going to have to prove that over and over again." The tension came to a head at Proxima Station, a mining facility on the edge of Council space. 3 human miners, brothers named Junho, Daehyun, and Wonshik Im, were working their regular shift when Corvathian security forces arrived with arrest warrants. The charges were vague. Unauthorized weapons possession. The weapons in question were the miners themselves. Junho, the eldest, tried to reason with the officers. "We're not armed. We're just doing our jobs." The lead officer, a Corvathian sergeant, wasn't interested in discussion. "You're coming with us. Don't resist." But when they tried to restrain Junho, he pulled away. It wasn't violent, just a simple movement to free his arm. The Corvathian officers responded by drawing shock weapons. What happened next was caught on 3 different security cameras and would be replayed across the galaxy for weeks. Junho stepped in front of his brothers, shielding them. The Corvathian officers advanced, 8 of them, all armed. Junho raised his hands peacefully. "We don't want trouble. Just tell us what law we've broken." The answer came in the form of a shock baton swung at his head. Junho ducked, faster than the Corvathian expected. The baton whistled through empty air. Another officer lunged from the side. Junho sidestepped, still not fighting back, just avoiding. Daehyun and Wonshik moved to help their brother. Now it was 3 unarmed humans against 8 armed Corvathians. The humans didn't throw a single punch. They didn't need to. They simply held their ground, grabbing batons as they swung, pushing officers back when they got too close, moving with a speed and coordination the Corvathians couldn't match. For 5 minutes, the confrontation continued. The Corvathian officers grew increasingly frustrated, their attacks wilder, less controlled. The human brothers remained calm, defensive, never escalating. Finally, station security arrived and separated everyone. No one was seriously hurt. The humans had some bruises. The Corvathians had their pride damaged. But the footage spread like wildfire across galactic networks. 3 unarmed humans holding off 8 armed soldiers. Not through violence, but through simple physical superiority. The reaction was immediate and polarized. Some saw it as proof that humans were dangerous, that restrictions were necessary. Chancellor Vex used it as evidence for his position, playing the footage during council sessions. Others saw it differently. The humans hadn't attacked. They'd defended themselves against unlawful arrest. They'd shown restraint when they could have done real damage. Commander Tholvan publicly commended the Im brothers for their discipline. "They could have hurt those officers badly," he stated in an official report. "They chose not to. That's not the behavior of a threat. That's the behavior of trained, professional individuals who understand the consequences of their actions." Back on Valoran Prime, Captain Choi gathered the human delegation in private. "This is getting worse," he said. "The incident at Proxima Station is being used to justify exactly what we feared. Vex is pushing for a vote on restrictions." "What can we do?" asked Taeyang Nam. "We wait," Choi replied. "We stay calm. We don't give them any ammunition, and we trust that reason will prevail." "What if it doesn't?" Hana asked. Choi met her eyes. "Then we face a difficult choice. Do we accept restrictions that treat us like criminals, or do we leave the Council and go our own way?" The thought of humanity leaving the Galactic Council sent chills through Hana. They had worked so hard to be part of this community. Leaving would mean isolation, would mean admitting that different species couldn't work together. "It won't come to that," Yuna said, though she didn't sound convinced. That night, Hana couldn't sleep. She lay in her quarters, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. A month ago, she was just an engineer. Now she was a symbol, a question mark, a source of fear for billions of beings across the galaxy. She thought about Earth, about the gravity that pulled at her every moment of her life there. She thought about the training runs in thin mountain air, the obstacle courses that seemed designed to break human bodies, but only made them stronger. She thought about her ancestors, who survived ice ages and plagues and predators, who built civilizations from nothing, who looked at a harsh world and refused to quit. Was she dangerous? Maybe. Any tool could be dangerous in the wrong hands. But she was also a person who valued cooperation, who believed in working together, who had joined the military not to fight, but to protect. The galaxy would have to decide if that was enough. Hana could only be herself and hope that being herself was sufficient. In the corridors outside, a Vrexian guard walked past her door. Through the walls, she heard him speaking to his partner. "What do you think of the humans?" A pause. Then, "I think they're exactly what they say they are. Strong, yes, but honorable. I'd rather have them as friends than enemies." Agreed. Hana smiled in the darkness. Maybe, just maybe, things would work out after all. Fear was loud, but trust could be stronger. She had to believe that. The galaxy's toughest alloy snapped, and every commander asked the same question. "What is she made of?" The distress signal came from Talaris 7th at Oro 300 station time. Hana was in her quarters, finally managing to sleep after weeks of stress, when the emergency alarms jolted her awake. She dressed quickly and rushed to the command center, where she found chaos. The main display showed Talaris 7th, a mining colony housing 40,000 civilians from 6 different species. Red warnings flashed across every screen. The audio feed crackled with screams and weapons fire. Commander Tholvan stood at the center of operations, his 4 arms moving across different control panels simultaneously. He looked up as Hana entered. "The Shraks," he said grimly. Hana felt ice in her stomach. Everyone knew about the Shraks, an insectoid species from beyond the galactic rim. They had been conquering worlds for decades. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply overwhelmed their targets through sheer numbers and biological warfare. "How many?" Captain Choi asked, arriving moments after Hana. "Initial estimates suggest 50,000 Shraks warriors," Tholvan replied. "They deployed some kind of toxin into the atmosphere. It's causing paralysis in most species. The colony's defensive forces are already compromised." The council convened within an hour. For once, political differences were set aside. The Shraks threatened everyone equally. Chancellor Vex himself proposed an immediate military response, and for once, no one argued. The Joint Response Fleet assembled quickly. 30 ships from 7 different species, carrying 20,000 troops. The Vrexians contributed their best warriors. The Lothari sent their tactical specialists. The Corvathians provided heavy armor support, and humanity sent everything they had available. 3,000 soldiers, which represented 30% of the ground forces. Some council members noted this was a disproportionate commitment given humanity's recent entry into the council. Others understood the political calculation. This was humanity's chance to prove themselves. Hana was assigned to combat engineering, tasked with maintaining defensive systems and repairing equipment under fire. She boarded the transport ship with her unit, checking her gear for the 3rd time. Around her, human soldiers prepared with quiet efficiency. Private Soyan Bayek, a young woman from Seoul, sat next to Hana during the flight to Talaris 7th. She was 19, fresh from training, and trying hard not to show her fear. "Is it true what they say?" Soyan asked quietly. "That the Shraks have never been beaten?" "They've never been beaten because they don't stop," Hana replied. "They just keep coming until the enemy can't fight anymore." "But we can fight longer than anyone else," Soyan said, and it wasn't a question. "Yes, we can." The fleet arrived at Talaris 7th to find the colony under siege. Shraks warriors swarmed the surface, their chitinous bodies gleaming in the harsh sunlight. The air was thick with the toxin they'd released, a biological weapon designed to paralyze nervous systems. The first wave of troops landed under heavy fire. Hana watched from the transport as Vrexian warriors stumbled, their movements sluggish. Lothari soldiers retreated to sealed environmental suits, their crystalline bodies unable to filter the toxin. Within minutes, it became clear that most species couldn't function in the contaminated atmosphere. but the humans kept moving. The toxin affected them, yes. Hana felt it in her lungs, a burning sensation that made breathing difficult. But her body processed it, filtered it, adapted to it. Within an hour, the symptoms began to fade. Within 3 hours, she barely noticed it. Dr. Velquist, monitoring from the medical ship in orbit, couldn't believe his readings. "The human metabolic rate is burning through the toxin," he reported to Tholvan. "It's still affecting them but not incapacitating them. They can fight." Tholvan made a decision that would be studied in military academies for decades. He reorganized the ground forces, putting human squads at the front. The Rexians would fight in respirators, operating at reduced capacity. The Lotharii would provide support from sealed positions, but humans would carry the main assault. Hana's unit landed on the colony's eastern perimeter. The Shraks were waiting. They poured out of the buildings like a dark tide, their mandibles clicking, their weapons firing crystalline projectiles that shattered against armor and stone. The fighting was brutal and immediate. Hana worked to restore a defensive shield generator while combat raged around her. A Shrak's warrior lunged at her. She grabbed her plasma cutter, designed for metal, and swung it like a club. The impact sent the creature flying backward. No time to think about that. She returned to the generator, her hands moving quickly through the repair sequence. Weapons fire sparked against the wall above her head. She ignored it. The generator hummed to life, its protective field spreading across the defensive position. "Generator online," she reported. "Acknowledged," came the response. "Fall back to secondary position." But there was a problem. Between her position and safety lay 50 meters of open ground swarming with Shrak's warriors. Hana assessed the situation quickly. Her armor could take a few hits. Her legs could cover the distance in under 10 seconds. She just needed to not think about the 1,000 ways she could die in those 10 seconds. She ran. The world narrowed to simple mechanics. Feet striking ground, arms pumping, breath steady despite the toxin, despite the fear, despite everything. Projectiles whizzed past her. One struck her shoulder armor, spinning her slightly. She corrected and kept running. Another hit her leg, a glancing blow that would leave a massive bruise but didn't penetrate. She reached the defensive line and dove over the barrier. Hands pulled her down to safety. She lay there for a moment, breathing hard, then got up and found the next equipment failure that needed fixing. This became the pattern. Fight, repair, move, repeat. Hours blurred together. Hana lost track of time, operating on training and instinct. At some point, she realized she hadn't slept in 20 hours. She kept working. Around her, other humans did the same. Private Minji Seo, a medic, carried wounded soldiers to safety. She made 11 trips through active combat zones, each time carrying someone too injured to walk. Most of them outweighed her by 20 kilograms or more. She carried them anyway. Corporal Jaiwan Park held a critical choke point alone for 4 hours when his unit got separated from the main force. The Shraks threw wave after wave at his position. He didn't retreat. He couldn't. Falling back would allow the Shraks to flank the entire defensive line. So he stayed, firing until his weapon overheated, then fighting hand-to-hand, then using debris as weapons when everything else failed. When reinforcements finally reached him, he was still standing, surrounded by Shraks' bodies, his armor dented and scarred but intact. The Shraks had conquered 17 worlds through attrition. They simply outlasted their enemies, fighting continuously while their opponents needed rest. But they had never fought humans before. Hour 24. Most alien forces were rotating units, each squad fighting for 6 hours, then resting. Human squads were fighting for 12-hour stretches, some pushing to 16 hours. The Shraks began to encounter something they'd never seen before, an enemy that wouldn't stop. Hour 48. The Shraks formation showed signs of confusion. Their tactics relied on overwhelming tired defenders, but the humans weren't getting tired. They were still fighting at nearly full capacity. Some were on their 3rd consecutive combat rotation. They were exhausted, yes, but exhausted humans were still more effective than fresh shraks. Hour 72. Hana was repairing a communications array when she noticed something strange. The shraks' attacks were becoming less coordinated. They were still fighting, but their movements lacked the precision they'd shown earlier. Through her scope, she saw Shrak's warriors stumbling, their chitinous bodies showing signs of fatigue. They were tired. The Shraks, who had outlasted every enemy they'd ever faced, were exhausted. The human forces pressed the advantage. Captain Choi coordinated a counteroffensive using human units as the spearhead. They pushed forward relentlessly, not giving the Shraks time to regroup. When a Shrak's position fell, humans immediately occupied it and fortified it. No rest, no pause, just constant pressure. The Shraks began to retreat. It started slowly, individual warriors pulling back from contested areas. Then entire squads withdrew. Within 6 hours, the Shraks were in full retreat, abandoning equipment and defensive positions in their haste to reach their ships. Commander Thalvan, watching from orbit, couldn't quite believe it. They're running. The Shraks are actually running. The human forces pursued them to the landing zones, harrying them every step of the way. The Shraks' ships lifted off under fire, their departure chaotic and rushed. Some abandoned warriors were left behind, too exhausted to reach the extraction points. When the last Shrak ship cleared orbit, a cheer went up across the human channels. They had done it. They had defeated an enemy that had never been defeated before, but the cost was visible. Hana stumbled to a supply depot and finally allowed herself to stop. Her legs shook. Her hands trembled from 72 hours of continuous work. She had repaired 14 different systems, carried supplies through combat zones, and helped evacuate wounded when medics were overwhelmed. She sat down heavily, her back against a storage crate. Around her, other humans were doing the same. They looked like they'd been through hell, because they had. Armor was scarred and dented. Faces were covered in dust and dried sweat. Everyone moved stiffly, their bodies finally acknowledging the punishment of 3 days without real rest. But they were alive. More importantly, they'd succeeded. Private Soyeon Bayek collapsed next to Hana, her young face aged by experience. "We won," she said, like she couldn't quite believe it. "We won," Hana confirmed. Medical teams arrived, treating the wounded and checking everyone for toxin exposure. Dr. Velquist appeared, his crystalline body reflecting the harsh sunlight. "You humans are insane," he said, but there was no anger in his voice, only wonder. 72 hours of continuous combat. Most species can barely manage 12. "We do what we have to do," Hana replied. Velquist looked at the human soldiers scattered around the supply depot, at their exhausted faces and battered armor. "You know what the casualty figures are?" he asked. Hana shook her head. 11 human deaths, 37 from all other species combined. You comprised 30% of the force but took less than 25% of the casualties, and you engaged in the heaviest fighting. Hana closed her eyes. 11 humans dead. Each one of them had a name, a family, a life. But 11 out of 3,000 was miraculous, given the intensity of the combat. "How?" Velquist asked. "How did you keep fighting when everyone else had to rest?" Hana thought about Earth, about evolution, about 200,000 years of surviving on a world that didn't care if humanity lived or died. She thought about her ancestors who hunted until the prey collapsed, who ran until the danger was behind them, who endured because stopping meant death. "Because that's what humans do," she said simply. "We endure,"